to Discograffiti, the deep dive podcast for music obsessives that gives maniacs like you and me the chance to connect with a brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebroe, and when I was a kid, I thought I loved music. But no, that was only the beginning. I almost lost my life, and in the process, it made music a top priority in a way I'd thought was completely unimaginable. I quit my job, went all in on Discograffiti, and never looked back. And so, with 3 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about, or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on love! Along with our special guest, Johnny Echols. This episode is part of a series called 7 and 7 and 7 Is, the definitive 21-episode story of Arthur Lee and Love, which I've consciously crafted to act as the ultimate repository of fact and opinion on one of the greatest bands to ever walk the face of the earth, the almighty Love. It includes 13 episodes heralding the return of Discograffiti host OG Joe Kennedy, 6 episodes from a 4.5-hour interview with OG Love mainstay Johnny Echols, and 2 episodes from a 2.5-hour interview with the members of Baby Lemonade, who've served as Love now for coming up on 35 years. This is part 10, the 5th part of my interview with Johnny, which covers the material he'd conceived to contribute to Forever Changes, Love's final single, and the extremely chaotic final days of the band. Here are just a few of the many things that Johnny discusses with Discograffiti in this podcast. The classic final 1968 single that Love made before breaking up. The tracks that Johnny had written and conceived to be part of Forever Changes back in 1967. A brutally honest and raw look back at Johnny's days using heroin while the band was imploding. How Johnny got off drugs once and for all. The little-known one-time live reunion of Love that came to a swift end. Johnny's relationship with Miles Davis in the early 1970s, not to mention the possibility that he was an uncredited inspiration behind one of Miles' seminal records from that time, and some hard truths about the end of Don Conca's life. And away we go then! When you guys walked into the studio on January 30th and 31st, 1968, for the You're Reminded We Belong Together in Laughingstock session, was the vibe tangibly different in the band at that point, or was it a carryover from the Forever Changes sessions?
No, actually, we were, we'd spent enough time away from each other that we started missing each other, missing playing. So it was actually a pretty comfortable atmosphere. And then we were laughing and joking. And of course, during the time of playing this one song, damn near 100 takes. And, you can play a song over and over and over, and you cannot play a fresh guitar solo when you're doing the same song over and over. But other than that little tense moment that we had during that, no, it seemed like we were compadres.
I got to tell you, Laughingstock, that's one of the greatest singles of all time. I look at one song and I think, oh, you don't get better than that song. And then I think of the other one and I think, well, shit, that one's even better. Laughingstock almost feels, even with the nod to My Little Red Book, it feels like a goodbye.
It very well could have been, because, as I said, we were already, that's the reason we were able to come back and laugh, because we were missing each other. But as far as our day-to-day life and hanging with each other, that have gone. We weren't doing that and weren't seeing each other all the time the way we did. We hadn't played that many gigs in the interim. We played, I think, the Whiskey A Go-Go and a couple of others, but we weren't playing nearly as often as we had. So it very well could have been, but I don't think consciously we thought of that. It's just slowly dissolving. It's like divorced people, when the people that are divorced but still able to be civil toward each other and once in a while have sex. Basically,
right.
And then, so we're basically those kind of people. We're once in a while we can come together, make music and laugh, and then go our separate ways. And so That's how it was.
Tell me about the initial plans for Gethsemane. And am I pronouncing that right?
Gethsemane.
Gethsemane. Sorry about that. Gethsemane. Okay. So what was your material like that you had ready for the band?
Well, I had a song called America. this would not have sounded anything like Forever Changes. It's, what I wanted to do is to play R&B, a fusion of blues. It's not rhythm blues, I'm saying. It's a fusion of old school blues, and rock. And at some point, I'm not sure if it'll be in time for this tour, but we finished most of the songs on that, so it will be released finally at some point within the next year. It's just me deciding whether I want to do this on my own and release it, because with the internet, you're capable of doing it on your own now without involving a record company, without just getting a few pennies rather than getting a full amount of money. So I'm looking at this for financial reasons, that it probably would make more sense for me to self-release. I have the finances where I can do that. And so I'm thinking of doing it that way and not having to worry about a record company and getting paid and all of the things that you have to deal with. But anyway, they're very good songs, but this is not Forever Changes, and it doesn't pretend to be.
So initially, wasn't it a finite amount of material, like 4 songs or something like that?
Yeah, so I've turned it into I think 11 songs. So over the years, I've written more songs. But this was going to be, I think, 5 songs. And Brian would have done his portions. He would have had more, because I only had about 4 or 5 songs ready, but Brian had quite a few. But the thing was, Brian had songs like Barbara John. Have you heard that?
Yeah, from If You Believe In. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had this kind of ambivalent feeling after hearing Forever Changes, because I'm thinking, had we added those songs that I had written and what Brian did, Forever Changes in the aggregate would be an entirely different album.
Sure.
So the universe stepped in and did what it did, and it pared it down. And even though I felt horrible, Brian was just devastated by it. It all worked out in the end only because we came out with a much, much better album as a whole than we would have had adding those songs to it, because they would have taken away from the magic of Forever Changes. And even though I think the songs that I've written are fantastic songs, they would have taken away from the magic of Forever Changes.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know your material except all the parts that you brought to love, but I do know, having heard If You Believe In and Candy's Waltz, my personal belief is that love works best with 1 or 2 Brian McLean songs per
Absolutely.
album. That's it. Anything more would have been tipped in a way that doesn't really make sense toward him.
That was the thing I tried getting across to Brian. Orange Skies turns out to be a very cool song. Yeah. But Brian's version of Orange Skies was totally different, and it would have been a mess. And we would not have gone as far as we did had we done more of Brian's songs, or even my songs. I think they're cool because I wrote them, but had we gone in that direction rather than the direction we wound up going in with Arthur's songs being the ones that were prevalently done, even though we did the music and should have gotten more credit, the songs that he initiated were more in keeping with the group persona, the thing that we built, that had we used the other songs, because then it would have been an entirely different sound, an entirely different aura, and I don't think we would have gotten nearly as far as we did.
So Gethsemane includes material written at the earliest, around 67. What about the most recent? What's the most recent song you've written for that pool?
Oh, gosh. Let's see.
And does it all sound of a piece, like it was created at the same time? All right, that concludes your free sneak peek into today's bonus episode. If you want to hear the rest of it, just visit patreon.com/Discograffiti and either purchase this podcast by itself for $4, or better yet, subscribe at the major tier and get access to Discograffiti's 3 weekly episodes. That's Friday's main episode, the Sunday Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. That's our podcast within a podcast, featuring Patreon members as guests, and your Tuesday bonus episode. Please keep in mind, this is entirely how I support my wife and 7-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member so you don't miss a single thing at patreon.com/Discograffiti.